Okay, because all of their bills get paid in the local currencies, and when the American dollar goes up, they're able to profit more because they pay their
Okay.
bills. They pay their bills in the currencies that are devalued against the dollar, and then they
Right.
oh shit, I'm getting it backwards. Anyway, let's just put it this way.
So would it do the same thing then if Canada were to take that same idea as the
Well,
United States?
that's exactly it, right? We're having a hard time exporting our manufactured goods because our dollar has risen against the United States dollar. The reason their dollar is depreciated is because they printed so much money, right? So the more money,
Right. We can't
by
stop
the law
them
of
from
supply and demand,
printing
the more
money.
money, the higher the prices for commodities go because inflation is when a larger amount of money chases the same amount of goods and services. So there's more money in the game to bid for these things, the prices go up. You know what I mean? So when they
Right.
print money, prices go up, and but their dollar goes down when it trades against other currencies, right?
I see.
Yeah, and so that's why we're having a hard time with our exporting industry, manufacturing industry, and and what we need to do, and this is what Mulcair hasn't talked about, is print money and buy some of our debt back, buy Ontario's debt back. You know, just print the money and buy the debt with it. Take the debt off the market and save our country from the time where interest rates go up and we can't service the debt anymore.
Right.
And we're one banking crisis away from interest rates going through the roof.
Yeah, and I know there's already talk, and now that with the as you mentioned, the European banking crisis is kind of coming to a head,
Mm-hmm.
and just goes to show how interconnected the system is. Because with the European banking crisis coming on, looks like there might be another liquidity injection in the Canadian system, which isn't quite the same as printing money, like you're saying, but
It has the
but
same destructive effects against our dollar.
true.
You know, because you're borrowing the money to give to the private banks.
Hmm.
And you're giving it in Canadian dollars. So in fact, you are creating more money. It's just that it's really nice when a government creates money and uses it to do something for the people of the country rather than creates more money and then just shovels it into banks, because you don't get any benefit to the people that eventually have to pick up the cost, which is the taxpayer. There's no benefit to us whatsoever
Right.
if the money is created straight into banks,
I
and then we
still
have to
want to
pay
talk to
interest on it.
somebody who's going to eventually explain to me why the Bank of Canada doesn't play that role anymore, and why we go directly to private banks when the government is borrowing money. It just seems, and that seems to be something that no political party wishes to touch, except for maybe the Canadian Action Party, which
I was just
is
thinking that, just to send people, not to get too deep into that dynamic, but because I just kind of lost my grip on it there a little while ago, got myself turned around backwards. But people should go and check out Paul Hellyer. They should check out the Canadian Action Party. And suffice it to say that Paul Hellyer used to be Deputy Prime Minister under Pierre Trudeau. And
right.
when Trudeau decided to borrow, the first Prime Minister to borrow from private lending institutions in order to cover a spending deficit in 1 year, because the Bank of Canada always used to print the money,
Hmm.
loan it to the government, right, at interest, at a minor amount of interest,
Yeah,
but because
lower
the,
amount,
because
definitely
the
lower.
people of Canada are the shareholders in that bank, the money that the bank makes from its interest paid to it from the government goes back to the government as dividends to the shareholders of the bank, which are the Canadian people.
Yeah, rather than going to the private system, borrowing money, and then ending up having a deficit based on the interest that's charged,
Hmm.
essentially, that the compounding interest. I mean,
Yep.
it doesn't. I
Well,
just
90% of our
that's
current debt is interest on the debt.
right.
Yeah, we've
Which
we've
which
actually
would be
borrowed a very
significantly
small amount of.
reduced, would it not, if the Bank of Canada was used in the same way it had been
Well,
prior to the year you just
it'd
mentioned?
be essentially zero.
Right.
It'd be essentially zero. So yeah, we could immediately we could print the money and pay the debt off. And I'd just like to point people at the Canadian Action Party website to do a little research for that. Paul Hellyer resigned from Pierre Elliott Trudeau's cabinet because of that decision, and came back about, I don't know, in the mid 90s to start the Canadian Action Party, and on exactly that issue. See, why I left politics was because we decided to borrow off private lending institutions. Now I'm coming back to start a party, and we're $600 billion in debt at the time. That's how deeply we were in debt when Paul Hellyer came back.
Right.
So in the intervening, I think it was less than 20 years that he was out of politics, we racked up a $600 billion debt.
Lovely.
Yeah, which was 90% interest.
It's insane. That's
remember,
the stuff that actually drives me crazy right there.
Mm-hmm. Imagine one person's career being able to bookend the entire accumulation of that debt.
Right.
Leaving. It's unfortunate that the Canadian Action Party didn't get any more attention than it did. I was at their first nomination meeting. Paul Hellyer was there actually, and the question. So I had all this explained to me directly by Paul Hellyer, by the way, because I was early 20s, and I really didn't have enough of a grip on economics. So he took me through the process of making me understand fractional reserve banking and how we came to the point where our government owed this much money, and the fact that 60% of our income tax goes directly to servicing our national debt. All that money disappearing off your checks, that's a bank tax, man. That's the bankers
going directly into private banks' pockets.
Yeah.
And it's not like private banks wouldn't exist and function and make money without that. I mean, they're going to make more money, obviously, with the government borrowing money from them. But at the same time, it's not like they're going to pop out of existence the second that Canada start using its national bank for what it was developed for.
Yeah.
And I got to say it right now, Tony. This is the one thing that I'm keeping my eye on as far as if the NDP ever does gain power. This is an issue for me where if they don't do something about this aspect of the banking system, then essentially that's where I myself personally would draw a line on failure, because then they're just that puts them in, and it's like, okay, now we know there would be no difference between on that level, right, between the Conservatives, the Liberals, and the New Democrats at that point. And I'm not saying that I've got my fingers crossed and that I think it will happen or that I don't think it will happen, but that's a big one for me as far as are they willing to at least consider and look at these
that's
other
the thing,
options?
Man. That's the thing. You know what? That is a conversation that we can't even really have while Stephen Harper's still in power. And then maybe we can think of bringing this up with the NDP or the Liberal or the Liberal Party or the
You're right.
Green
It's
Party.
A few steps down the road.
Wow, we cannot. We can't even get people to vote for parties that are going to protect the environment. We're going to try to,
let alone
something that simple to understand. You know what I mean? How are we going to get to a point where we can have a national discussion on fractional reserve banking?
Yeah, exactly. Something that takes some sort of knowledge of economics, which most people are, not interested in, find it to be a boring topic. It is true. We got to defeat Stephen Harper, get proportional representation, and then start dealing with these other issues. But
we're a long way away from that. It's a sad thing to have to say, but I mean, you know what? The difference between where we are right now and where we need to be is a shitload of education that has to occur in conversations just like this. You know what I mean? I mean, we may as well get started at it, because it's going to have to happen, and people, as things go where I think they're going to go in the next few years, people are going to want some answers. You know what I mean? For the first time, like when everyone's happy, when everyone's doing good, when everyone's making money, everyone, feels like we have a good healthcare system. We'd like to bitch about it, but can you imagine being in the States?
Yeah.
As long as enough people in this country are kind of getting by and doing all right, it's going to be very hard to have a sophisticated conversation about the fundamentals according to which our economy is run. As long as the economy is serving the interests of enough people, that conversation is not going to be had because no one's going to feel the need for it. But as we work to get Stephen Harper.
That might be another area where Stephen Harper shoots himself in the foot, though. If Stephen Harper keeps ripping and tearing through any sort of progressive legislation that Canada has developed over the last 100 years, pretty soon he's going to paint himself into a corner.
Well, he's going to wake people up himself, he's going to he's giving people like a place to point their finger, as people, like if the going gets tough and people start losing their pensions, or enough people get near retirement that don't even have pensions, and what's he going to do next after he's bumped the OAS age up to 67 from 65? What's he going to do next? He's going to take old age pensions off of the cost of living increase peg. Currently pensions are fixed, but they increase with inflation.
Right.
What happens if we have runaway inflation because of a global banking situation, and he decides to unpeg pensions from the inflation rate? Then he might have himself a problem. But
and that's where again, as much as we're seeing progressives come together, which is obviously a necessary thing. The other thing that is going to be more difficult, but that we need to start doing, is we need to start talking with these looser conservative supporters, these people who are voting for Stephen Harper that might not identify as conservatives, but or have voted for other parties in the past, or any sort of, as soon as we see an opening with anyone that we know who might be voting conservative, we need to open up dialogue with these people, and find ways to pull them away. Because if we don't, like you said, his 35% is so solid, and that he doesn't even have to try for it. I mean, so unless we start to talk to some of these people and try to find the issues that will at least draw them out and make them realize that they can't continue to support Stephen Harper if they want to have, even in a large way, you could say if they even really want to have a real conservative option in the future, because he's giving them something a lot worse than conservatism here. I mean, this is just horrible what's happening.
Well, I know we haven't talked too much about the budget, but did you know in our budget this year, the law was changed to allow American law enforcement onto a Canadian soil to arrest Canadian citizens? Did you know that?
It's the coagular term is Operation Shipwriter, I believe.
Oh, okay. Operation Shipwriter sucks.
I think that's the nickname for it, right?
Okay.
But it's called Integrated Cross-Border Marine Law Enforcement Operations.
Jesus Christ.
Yeah.
Well, I'll tell you what. There's a lot of people watching Hockey Night in Canada. Well, I guess hockey's over now, thank God. But they're probably watching the baseball game tonight, not thinking about whether those people who are standing in Parliament right even as we speak. No, it's looking like it done. Nathan Cullen's outside talking. Let's go to Nathan Cullen.
Reduced, be it employment insurance that is being lost, or pensions that are taken away, or the very fact that democracy is being undermined by this government. Continuing to believe that ramming through a bill like this is good policy and good politics, we disagree.
You say that the morale in there is excellent, but do you have any sense of whether this action is
Nicole
resonating
Turmel
with Canadians? What do you think of the public opinion of what you're doing here?
Well, we're obviously not polling this as such, but as Nicole mentioned in her comments, and I should have as well, the feedback we've been getting on social media, on Twitter and Facebook, I've been on it all night watching what the response has been heartwarming. That people, there's an office in Prince George where people didn't occupy the office, but stood outside in vigil all through the night, demanding that their MP actually act like a member of Parliament. The messages coming in have been beautiful, actually, and I don't know, they sort of steal your resolve a bit to know that people appreciate that when the country is being bullied, our Parliament's being bullied, that there's someone who's going to push back.